Michael Myers is a horror icon who never says a word. But every actor who steps under that mask says plenty with just their body. That's why ranking the men who played him is more than just a list. It's a way to see how each version carried the legend of him. Some gave us cold, calculating terror. Others, well, let's just say the mask deserved better. So here's the list, counting down from the bottom of the barrel to the ones who made Myers feel like a nightmare again. If there's a low point for Michael Myers, it's here. Don Shanks stepped into the role in Halloween 5, and it just didn't land. To be fair, the movie itself wasn't doing him any favors. The script was messy, the mask looked like something picked up last minute at a discount store, and the direction stripped Myers of his mystery. Shanks's performance wasn't terrible, but it was no way close to being memorable for fans. He didn't add menace, didn't add style, and didn't create any new flavor to the character. The most memorable thing about his Myers is that bizarre scene where he puts on a different mask and plays around in a car with Tina. That's not iconic, that's awkward. When people talk about the worst Myers, his name usually comes up first. It's not because Shanks himself lacked talent. He's a stuntman who knew his craft. But because there's almost nothing from his portrayal that fans carry with them today. Michael Myers is supposed to be unforgettable. This version fades into the background. Halloween. Resurrection is infamous for one reason. It turned Myers into a punchline. Brad Loree was the man under the mask. And while he had some good moments, the film around him buried any chance he had to shine. There are flashes where Loree gets it right. His walk through the dark tunnel feels solid. His attack bursting through a window actually looks brutal. And a handful of shots show that he understood how to carry himself as the Shape. But then came the script. You can't survive a scene where Busta Rhymes is literally yelling at Michael, calling him names, and even beating him down. No amount of physical presence can survive that kind of creative sabotage. Loree's Myers ends up being remembered as the one who got punked. And that's not his fault. Any actor in his position would have been sunk by the tone-deaf direction and campy setup. He's still above Don Shanks, because at least a couple of shots are memorable. But overall, he sits near the bottom. Durand had the tricky job of bringing Michael Myers back in a late 90s horror movie. H20 was sleek, self-aware, and very much a product of its time. So Durand's Myers had to fit into a different kind of atmosphere than the 70s or 80s versions. What works in his favor is the energy he brought to the role. Durand's Myers is quicker, more human, and not afraid to really throw himself into movement. The sit-up, the shadow reveals, the sudden steps, they echo Nick Castle's original touches, but with a sharper edge. But there are issues. Sometimes Myers feels a little too human, like a slasher villain instead of the embodiment of evil. The constant mask changes in H20 don't help either. In some shots he looks menacing, in others almost cartoonish. Still, Durand deserves more credit than he often gets. He carried himself with a confidence that matched the movie's style, and he gave Jamie Lee Curtis a strong adversary in that climactic showdown. Durand isn't at the top, but he's not forgettable either. In a different film with better direction, his portrayal could have climbed higher. Now things start to get interesting. Dick Warlock took over right after Nick Castle, playing Myers in Halloween 2. Following up the original was an impossible task, but Warlock put his own stamp on it. His Myers was colder, stiffer, and had a zombie-like quality. This wasn't an accident. Halloween 2 picked up right where the first film ended, with Michael already shot and bleeding. Warlock leaned into that by making Myers feel less like a man and more like a relentless corpse. The scene where he walks straight through a glass door without flinching shows exactly how he played the role. Unstoppable, mechanical, and unfeeling. Fans are split on Warlock. Some love the inhuman quality he brought, seeing it as an evolution of the character into something supernatural. Others hate the stiffness, feeling like Myers turned into a Frankenstein's monster instead of the silent stalker from the first film. Wherever you land, there's no denying Warlock gave us a distinct version of the Shape. His work set the tone for how sequels would often treat Michael. Less mystery, more machine. And whether you love that or not, it left a lasting mark. If you're enjoying this ranking, hit that like button and drop your favorite Michael Myers performance in the comments. We want to know who your Shape is. The moment Tyler Mane showed up as Michael Myers, you knew things had changed. Gone was the mystery of a quiet figure lurking in shadows. This Myers didn't just stalk you. He bulldozed through walls to get to you. At nearly 7 feet tall, Mane's size alone made him terrifying. He wasn't just a killer, he was a juggernaut. Rob Zombie's Reboot was never about subtlety, and Mane fit that vision perfectly. His Myers was pure brutality. Every swing of the knife felt like it could split someone in half. The way he towered over his victims added a level of intimidation that no other actor could replicate. Some fans didn't love it. They argued that Zombies films turned Myers into just another violent human, stripping away the supernatural aura that made him special. Instead of the Shape, Mane was more like an unstoppable serial killer with brute strength. But even critics of the films can admit one thing. Mane's Michael was horrifying to look at. Watch Halloween 2, 2009, and you see a Myers who doesn't just kill because it's in the script. He kills because the world gave him nothing but violence. The way he handled those bar thugs, or how he stalked through that hospital vision, it all screamed raw power. Would I want this Myers chasing me down a dark alley? Absolutely not. He's the one version that looks like he'd break every bone in your body before even thinking about the knife. That sheer intimidation factor earns him his top 4 spot. George P. Wilbur's Myers might not be as tall as Mane's, but he delivered something fans had been craving: balance. After Halloween 3 skipped Michael altogether, the franchise needed to bring him back in style. Halloween 4 did just that, with Wilbur playing a version that felt like a mix of Castle's original subtlety and something darker. In Halloween 4, Wilbur's movements were deliberate and controlled. He wasn't flashy, but he was relentless. His scenes had weight. Every step felt heavy. Every tilt of the head carried menace. He was brutal when needed, but also patient, letting the silence do most of the work. Then came Halloween 6, where the things got even more vicious. The theatrical cut amped up the kills, and Wilbur's Myers delivered. He smashed, stabbed, and destroyed with a cold efficiency that reminded audiences this wasn't just a man. It was evil, given form. Wilbur's legacy is cemented because he managed to embody both sides of Myers. The supernatural presence that feels like he can't be stopped, and the raw physicality that makes every encounter feel deadly. He might not get as much fanfare as Castle or Courtney, but he's the glue that kept Michael terrifying in an era where horror was shifting into camp. If Nick Castle created Michael Myers, James Jude Courtney resurrected him for modern audiences. Halloween 2018 wasn't just a reboot. It was a reminder that the Shape still had the power to terrify, and Courtney was the one who carried that weight. What makes Courtney so good is that he studied Castle's original movements, but updated them. His Myers walks with purpose, heavy, but not slow. He feels older, but not weaker. There's a lived-in menace to the way he tilts his head or stares into the distance. This isn't a copy, it's an evolution. Courtney also brought brutality back in a way that felt earned. In Halloween Kills, when he slaughters firefighters, it's not just gore for the sake of it. His movements are precise, calculated, and terrifying. He doesn't run, he doesn't rush. He knows exactly what he's doing. Fans often say he's the perfect blend of Castle's subtle terror and Mane's raw force. That's why so many rank him this high. Watch how he moves through a neighborhood on Halloween 2018, going house to house with quiet efficiency. It's clinical, almost surgical, but also savage. Could Courtney one day be considered the greatest Myers of all time? If he had more films under his belt, maybe. He's already close. But the #1 spot belongs to the man who made Myers into a legend. There's no escaping it. Nick Castle will always be the king of Michael Myers. He wasn't a stuntman. He wasn't a wrestler. He was just John Carpenter's friend hanging around the set. But what he did with a mask and a simple walk turned into one of the most iconic performances in horror history. Castle's Myers didn't need brute strength or flashy kills. His power came from presence. The way he walked slowly but deliberately. The way he seemed curious about his victims before striking. The way he tilted his head like a predator studying prey. Every movement was simple, but every movement told you the same thing. This man cannot be reasoned with. Take the scene where Loree sees him standing by the hedge, or the moment where he lurks behind the sheets blowing in the wind. Castle's Myers doesn't need to do anything. He just is. That's the scariest part. What makes Castle untouchable is that he defined Myers for everyone who followed. Warlock, Wilbur, Durand, Maine, Courtney, all of them studied what he did and tried to build on it. But without Castle, there's no blueprint. He made Myers into the shape, the faceless terror, the thing that walks among us with no motive and no end. Even in later years, when Castle returned for small cameo shots in the newer films, fans lost their minds. Just knowing the original shape was back gave the character weight again. That's legacy. That's the kind of impact only the #1 spot deserves. 8 men stepped into the mask, and each left a mark on Michael Myers. Don Shanks showed how bland the shape could look without guidance, while Loree proved no performance survives a weak script. Durand brought energy but lost mystery, and Warlock gave a cold, robotic menace. Then came the big names. Tyler Mane's hulking brute, George P. Wilbur's perfect balance, James Jude Courtney's modern terror, and Nick Castle, the original icon who defined it all. Silent but unforgettable, every version helped shape a legend. Like, share, and subscribe to see which horror legend we break down next.